we're rolling.
Okay.
Oh, I gotta button up my sweater. It is damn cold out there. And snowing.
It's not that bad.
I wasn't expecting it to be a blizzard. No. Anyway.
I know Samantha was saying that she was cold when it was down to 50 degrees.
I know.
Said, that's
See, that's like my favorite weather. Is
We
like
go out
50
in shorts
degree.
at 50
Yeah, 50
degrees.
degree fall weather is my favorite weather. But first snowfall is always exciting. So, good morning, everybody. This is Telltale. I'm Emily.
I'm great.
And we have had our first snowfall here, and it's like a few inches. I was
Pretty
expecting,
big
yeah, I was expecting it to be just a light dusting, but we had to shovel.
At least we didn't get the Halloween blizzard this
Oh
time.
yeah, this year we didn't get the Halloween
A couple of years
blizzard.
ago we did.
Oh, that was annoying. I felt so bad for all the kids who wanted to just have cool costumes, and they had to be in snow pants the entire time they were out trick-or-treating. Poor babies. Not quite what they expected. That's all right. But yeah.
So we took a couple weeks off of all videos, really. I had some that I just didn't have the motivation to edit. So last couple Fridays we haven't had anything either.
Yeah.
But this Friday we'll have one up, and for November we are focusing on short stories. So the first one this Friday is going to be our discussion about the value of the short story as a literary form.
Yes, yes, and we both are big lovers of short stories too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to talk about that because there's so many people who are like, I just can't stand short stories, and I'm like, were you dropped as children? Like, what's the problem here? Like, that's
Exactly.
quality literature in short format for a busy lifestyle. Why would you give that up?
Exactly.
So,
And there are a lot of great works that are short. Old Man and the Sea is sold as a novel, but it's really more like a novelette. It's
Yeah.
it's relatively short.
yeah.
And Snows of Kilimanjaro is probably novelette length. It's definitely not a novel.
Yeah.
And that's two of the greatest works by Ernest
Pretty much
Hemingway.
exclusively
Not
anything by H.P. Lovecraft.
400 pages. Yeah, Lovecraft, Poe, all short.
All short stories. So definitely missing out on some really great literature if you're not into short stories, and we will discuss more of that too. And one of the things I I forgot to say it in the video, is that sometimes characters make reappearances from short stories. Like
Yes, they do.
Tolkien definitely threw Tom Bombadil in there as recycled material from a previous short story, and that's one of
Yeah.
my favorite Lord of the Rings characters. So, I mean, you miss out if you don't read short stories because you might get more of another story or a repeat character that shows up in novels later. So you
Yeah.
really don't.
And something I didn't bring up in our video, short stories are a great way, if you're not sure about an author, instead of investing the time and money in a whole novel, read one of their short stories. It's probably in a magazine or a book with other stuff that you will love.
Even
And so-
online, like you can
yeah.
find like copies of their stuff online because sometimes they just post things out there themselves.
Especially
and just,
for the
like,
classics. Project Gutenberg has a ton of
Project
that stuff.
Gutenberg has tons of short story compilations and just isolated stories in general. So
And most authors have some kind of short story collection. And, it's just a great way to get introduced to the author and their style, and whether or not you're going to like their voice before you invest in a whole
Yeah.
novel
yeah,
and spend a week reading.
yeah,
So, we love short stories, and we're devoting November to it. We'll probably be putting most of the videos up in December because we'll shoot the end of the month. I've got some though that I want to do before then and put up, so we'll start putting up some short story stuff in November.
yeah. And that's pretty much what I've been reading this week. I just finished The Roads Roll.
The Roads Must Roll.
The Roads Must Roll.
Robert Heinlein.
Yep, that was a really
One
good
of
one.
his very earliest stories.
That was a really interesting story. Good commentary on the working class and their treatment and their importance, but also what happens when there's corruptibility. So that was a really interesting story. I'm still working through a lot of the same stuff I've been working on, like the short story works of Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Gilman Perkins. The words are hard. I haven't had enough caffeine yet. But yeah, so I'm still working through that series of short stories, which I'm really enjoying. Really like her characters a lot. And then I'm reading a memoir called Dying, which is really interesting. It's heavy stuff. So I'm working my way through that. It's not a very long one, but just life has gotten busy, so I really haven't done a ton of new reading, but I've done a ton of book buying.
Yeah, we've gone out thrifting a couple of times.
Yeah.
She showed me where all the good deals.
Yeah, there's some really great books at thrift stores right now because thrift stores are starting to take in new donations. So come winter, we're gonna be tucked in our houses as it snows outside and reading most of the time. I'm actually gonna take you to a place after this that has some really nice books. So we're
Looking
gonna
forward to it.
Yes, we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. So I have tons of books I bought that I'm excited about, but nothing I've started reading yet. It's almost like reading paralysis, where it's like, man, I should start one of these, or should I? There are so many. Which one do I start with? So I end up like having this internal dialogue looking at my bookshelves, and then yesterday I was out thrifting with a friend, and I was like, I need to start looking for more bookshelves to put in my living room or figure out what to do because I'm running out of space for all these books. So, oh well.
I just gotta build bookshelves.
Yeah.
Bunch of them on the floor.
I have such a great bookshelf my dad built for me. I want him to do another one, but he's so busy. I feel bad asking, hey Dad, for Christmas, can I get a bookshelf? So I'm kind of waiting, holding off a little bit, seeing what I can do to kind of just rearrange my space. I might just start stacking books, just have book stacks all around my book nook.
Get rid of the furniture and make book furniture.
Yeah, I'm considering it because I have so much right now. My poor husband's like, again? And then I found another box of antique books that I was going to sell that I had forgotten about in my office under my couch in my office. And I was like, oh no, more books. And I'm like re-going through them to make sure I actually want to get rid of them. And I'm like, I really need to start getting rid of some of these things. I can't hang on to it. My house is too small. I just have a tiny ranch house.
Yeah. And that reminds me, we have an Etsy store. It's just called Telltale Books, right?
Yep, Telltale Books, LLC.
Books, LLC. And we're putting basically our doubles, and
Yep.
I've been replacing most of my paperbacks with hardcovers,
Yep.
and I've kept my paperbacks in really great
Yeah,
shape.
he has
so,
fantastic, like, just some really fantastic books.
Yeah, I'm kind of ridiculous about the
Yeah.
books.
Little,
Some of
it's
the
all right. There's
earliest
nothing
ones
wrong
I
with
bought
being
are
like
in bad
possessive
shape.
and taking good care of your collection.
Yeah, because I saw it as a collection from the start when I was a teenager, so
Yeah.
I've just always taken really good care of them. But now I'm replacing with hardcovers, and when I do, they're going in the Etsy store. We just sold Purgatorio and Paradiso last night.
Oh, did we really?
Yes, I didn't think we were
Yay.
going to sell those because somebody bought the Inferno, and somebody wants the other two.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'll have to go
we
package
made
those up.
another sale. So we're getting a slow but nice start on that store.
Yeah.
And so visit it. You might find we're putting new stuff up all the time. I've got a whole bunch of stuff I need to put on there. You might find a really good book that you want to purchase from us.
Yeah.
And all the money's going to help us towards our goal of
Yeah.
publishing a book.
Yep, getting our own publishing rolling is the main focus right now. So all of the book buying we've been doing is out of our own pockets because we just love books. But yeah, we have a lot of really great stuff in there, a lot of really wonderful editions. I keep finding those gorgeous leather-bound Reader's Digest unabridged. Like, they're not condensed at all. They're the full classics and stuff. There's some really gorgeous ones.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you can get those on the used market dirt cheap. And they're really nice books.
Yeah. So it's really nice to be able to find those for so inexpensive and be able to like just clean them off, dust them off, make sure they look nice, and then put them on the market for people who, you know, may have overlooked them just because they looked a little dusty and grungy from the thrift store. So that was really nice to be able to find a nice collection of those recently. So it's
And I
lovely.
was very excited to find And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie in the 1980s leather-bound Bantam edition,
Gorgeous.
which I couldn't find for a reasonable price. Everything online of that book I was finding was like $50, $60 for
Yeah.
that book. I found it for $1 in a thrift store in just amazing condition.
Yeah.
So-
I found a book I had been looking for 12 years, and I actually looked. It was a library book that I had gotten in middle school, and I had read it. And then when I became a teenager and in high school, I was like, I remember that book being really entertaining, and I went looking for it. I've never found it. I could never find it anywhere. Even on Amazon, there are millions of books by the same title, and it's a collection of short stories. I was really struggling because there's a lot of them out there of the same title. So I was like, I'm never going to find this book. And then I found the book at the thrift store for $1. And actually, I looked it up because at the time, I had done a book report on that book. And the author, and the library card stamp is still in there. I was the last person to check that book out based off the date of when I wrote that report. And that book. I thought it was so crazy.
So you
like,
gotta keep that card in.
yeah, it is. It's one of those like digital stickers where they just put the stamp on it, so it's still in there. It's not like the old style cards where.
Okay. I
But
like
yeah,
the old style
it was just so cool though to be like, that was like a really great book, and to find the exact copy from the library donated to the local thrift store. And I'm just like, and I was the last person who took it out. I just thought that was so crazy.
It is.
Fate.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, you were
the
meant
history.
to find that book.
For sure. For sure. But yeah, that was very exciting to find that book after so long of looking for it. And not, I couldn't even remember the author's name at the time either. I still can't. I just remembered the title and the book cover.
Trying to remember. I think it was Charles DeLint.
Probably, yeah. Something like that. It was really good. And
Yeah.
I'm just really excited to delve back into that one. So
Okay.
it's good stuff. But
Okay.
yeah. So
So yeah, I've been doing too much book buying too. I gotta stop.
I know it's so hard.
But you know, there's certain books I want for our Telltale collection. We're reading from, and I want nice copies to be able to hold up in the videos, not just an ebook or
Yeah.
crappy beat up paperback.
Yeah.
So I'm investing some money to build a library, and of course it's only going to grow in value over time.
Yeah.
So I justify it by that. Of course, my wife crabs at me, but
Yeah, my husband's like, we're running out of room, honey. I'm like, well, I don't complain when you buy more DVDs and movies and collector's editions of those. So he shut up real fast.
I don't have that.
Yeah.
Gail doesn't spend money.
Yeah, my husband doesn't spend a lot of money.
No.
He tries to find good deals as much as he can, but there are some things like, there are some films that just aren't internationally produced, so you
Yeah.
have to buy them internationally and hope that they have the same region code as your DVD player.
Exactly.
So he's lucked out quite a few times finding movies that, you know, I have that whole collection insured. I should insure my book collection too,
I
but
should do that too.
yeah, it's nuts. But what have you been reading lately? Everything?
I've been doing a lot of reading short stories. I've got some books going. I've always been curious about Marge Piercy, so I started reading one of her biggest books, not just in number of pages, but also in the sales from the 1980s called Gone as Soldiers. It's about people's lives during World War II. It's a fascinating book so far, though I'm only 50 pages into it. But I've also been reading a lot of short stories. The anthology that you're pulling these stories from, I no longer, I read that from the library, so
Yeah.
I've never had a copy of that book. But I have all those stories in a variety of other books. So while I'm in those books, I'm reading some of the other stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff that
It's
I've
hard
already
not
read before.
to. Yeah. It's hard not to.
So I read the Ian Binder story, I, Robot, which doesn't really have anything to do with Isaac Asimov's book, I, Robot, but Asimov was inspired by that story when it was published in 1939, which is why his book was called I, Robot, I think. But the original Ian Binder story was published at a time when robots were always just these machines running amok, killing people, needed to be stopped. And this was the first one that actually treated an intelligent robot with sympathy. And that was a groundbreaking idea at the time. Nobody had written it. Everybody just wrote these stories about robots being, these mindless machines going off destroying.
Yeah.
And this robot was written like a human being. It had intelligence, it had empathy, it had a character. It wanted to do good.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing story. It's a science fiction classic. So of course then, that was the first story in a whole series of stories about the robot named Adam Link. So I tracked down online and bought a really good copy of Adam Link Robot, which is the collection of all of the Adam Link stories. So
Very
I'm reading
nice.
that. In the same book as I, Robot, which is the great science fiction stories 1939, edited by Isaac Asimov and Martin H. Greenberg. I read a story by Lester Del Rey called The Day Is Done, which I read it as a teenager. Didn't do much for me because I just wasn't into that. I was looking for spaceships and stuff like that.
It just
robots. And this one was set in prehistory, and it's about the last Neanderthal man.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a 20-page story with fully fleshed world building, fully fleshed characterization of these people.
I'm amazed.
It's amazing.
I'm amazed that people can do that in short stories.
But it's a really good example
so good.
that a short story doesn't have to lack those things.
Yes.
If the author doesn't
When built
write,
well.
it can have all of it.
Yep. You can have it all and have it be a short story. I appreciate that kind of thing.
And
a lot.
a couple more like that, two related stories, not related to Day Is Done, but the stories are related to one another, by John W. Campbell, who's better known for Who Goes There, Out of Night and Cloak of Aesir.
Oh.
Cloak of Aesir is like a sequel to Out of Night, and the two together make this whole story set 4,000 years in the future.
Yeah.
These were written in the 1930s, but in 1977, some aliens had come to Earth and conquered mankind and made them slaves.
Okay.
Here we are 4,000 years later in the stories, and mankind, the men want to rise up against
The alien overlords.
Exactly. And this one, the characterization is better than most 1930s, not as good as Day Is Done, but excellent world building, excellent imagining of the aliens.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of wild science and really cool imagination, which characterizes a lot of the 1930s. The science today is totally laughable, but just the imagination.
Yeah, the amount of time and effort people put into building these worlds, even if it's a short story, is just wonderful. And that's why I think people so underappreciate short stories.
Yes.
Is because you aren't sitting there realizing how much information you're getting in such a short span of time, but you're still getting a quality piece of literature. Not that all of them are quality.
Right.
Some are very forgettable, but others, fantastic. You don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So there really is a lot, especially in the early days of science fiction, that's worth exploring through it. And, well, Sturgeon's Law, Theodore Sturgeon, he was a science fiction writer. His law is that 90% of science fiction is crap, but 90% of everything is crap. And that is so true. And you have to weed through that 90% to get to that 10% that is just amazing.
Or you have to be really good at settling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not I'm one of those people who I try to find something to appreciate in everything, so it's not a total loss to me, but there are some things too where it's just unredeemable. Like, there's nothing I can do. Like, it was just bad from the start, it's bad to the finish. I just pushed through to just watch the train wreck happen, so to speak. That's how I felt about C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength.
Yes.
I felt like I was just there to watch the train wreck and cringe. Yeah, I was just there to watch the train wreck and cringe. But the other two were so great. So it's hit or miss sometimes, but
It is.
you do have to weed out. And a lot of it too, like, I think I got into short stories mostly because of, one, I have a very hard time with attention span stuff. I have a very busy lifestyle. I have a chronic illness I have to stay on top of. Like, I get a lot of interruptions just from health and lifestyle, and I have cats who will suddenly be like, hey, this book is now my bed. So, like, having a short story gives me kind of a respite in between where I can get a lot of things read in a short span of time. But I had started with an author I already knew I liked because I had given one of his books a try, and that was Garth Nix was actually my first introduction to short stories. Not that I didn't also read Poe and things when I was in high school and stuff like that, but those things didn't interest me as much as the classic novels did when I was in high school. And then when I got older and got in college, I still wanted to do pleasure reading, but like my senior year I was taking 22 credit hours, so I couldn't read a full novel and have time. But I could read short stories, I could read articles, I could go on people's blogs who write fiction, and there are some really talented people out there who just write really quick short stories that are very interesting or very thought-provoking and leave a lot to ponder. And so if you don't know how to get into short stories, start with an author you already know you like. Stephen King, lots of short stories, lots of novels. He writes a lot. This guy, I don't know if he can breathe without sitting at a computer or typewriter and writing. Kind of thing. Like, he's a machine. He just cranks them out. But like, if you like Stephen King, he has a lot of work that you can pull from that's available online. A lot of little excerpts and things. Like, he does a lot of things just pro bono.
Yeah, he just recently, in September, I think it was, put a short story online. It wasn't much of anything. I read it. It wasn't great or anything, but it was Stephen King and it was free online. You just download it and read it. And,
yeah, if you like his stuff, you'll probably like his short stories. If you like Isaac Asimov, plenty. There's plenty. You know, there's plenty of other authors too who write. Yeah, you're hard pressed if you have an author you like. Chances are he probably has a collection. He or she has a collection of short stories that is worth investing in.
And if you're looking for something new, I guarantee there are tons of science fiction authors you've never heard of that wrote some really wonderful novels and short stories.
Or go to the thrift store. There's tons of compilations.
Oh yeah,
tons of them. I picked up and omnibuses. There's so many omnibuses now. It's so cool. Like, I picked up one. I promised myself when I went shopping I will only buy one book at this place because the previous places I had bought at least 5. And so I bought one book at the place that I'm taking you to today. But it was an omnibus, so technically it was 3 books. But it was one for the price of one. So, but it was Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I haven't read a lot of his stuff, except, you know, I know the concept of Tarzan because my dad read all the Tarzan books and talked about them as part of his childhood. Yeah, everybody knows that stuff. So I picked up the omnibus of his sci-fi stuff, and I'm pretty excited to read that one too, because I just haven't read a lot of his work really. I think I read the first Tarzan book in his Tarzan Adventure series.
Yeah, I've only read all the John Carter novels.
And I think that's what my husband said too. He's only ever read John Carter. But, so yeah, I haven't read any of the John Carter. I saw the movie. I liked it. It was good.
There aren't too many people that like it, but I did like it. It was different from the book, but I think it needed to be. If you read the book, you'll know what I mean. The book was written for a totally different era, aimed at young boys. I don't think it's filmable as is.
It really wasn't. From what I hear, from what you've told me, it wasn't filmable as it was. But I enjoyed that. I thought it was a really fun concept. Like, let's take a cowboy and shove him in Mars. That's quality stuff. It seems like a weird concept, but it works for some reason. It just does.
Yeah.
So
They're simple, but they're fun. They're a ton of fun to read.
yeah. So yeah, short stories. Sorry, I interrupted you. Anything else you've
No,
been reading?
anything else I've been reading? I think that's it. The Johnny Campbell, the others in great science fiction stories, and yeah, Marge Piercy. Marge Piercy. I didn't say too much about her. She's a devout feminist from the 1960s.
Yeah.
So she's part of that first generation that was pushing for ERA and really got feminism going in the 1970s. And she was a poet and author
Yeah.
and wrote a lot of novels. She wrote some science fiction. There's a couple of her novels that are definitely science fiction. Gone to Soldiers is not science fiction. But so far it's an excellent book. But I think you would probably like her work.
Yeah, I tend to like historical fiction a lot too. That was my main genre when I was like in elementary school. I really loved historical fiction, especially like diary and journal style writing. I enjoyed those kinds of things, so I probably would really enjoy that. World War II is a fascinating time. Like there was a lot going on. There's a lot going on in people's lives. There's a lot going on politically, and of course the war. So.
And one of the places we went shopping, the Sheboygan Library book sale had two other books by her. So now I've got 3 books by Marge Piercy.
Yay! All the things, man. I have so much. I just like organized my boxes. Like we were basically when we went shopping, they just give us giant cardboard boxes to haul things with, and I just put it in my living room. I'm like, and I'm gonna. I think almost 40 books. Yeah, that was a good haul.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is we didn't spend that much money.
No.
You know, I think I spent total what I would normally spend on one book.
And then we hit up that garage, the community garage sale at the.
Yeah, at Two Rivers, and found Star Surgeon by Alan E. Norse. It's in really bad shape, but I think I can fix it.
Yeah.
And that's an old book about a doctor out in space.
I think you got it for like 25 cents too,
Yeah,
or something
25.
like that.
75 cents.
75
it was,
cents, yeah.
Which
Less
is
than
still
$1.
dirt cheap,
Yeah.
So, I've never read that book. I've read some short stories by Alan Norse, and he's good.
Yeah.
He was an actual doctor, and he wrote science fiction on the side. And it was pretty good.
Very nice.
Another one of those authors that you've never heard of. Just, he's not around anymore writing, but he wrote some really terrific stories back in the 1950s and 60s.
Very nice. Yeah, I like discovering that kind of stuff too. Like, there's a lot of authors I've just never heard of, and just discovering new authors and rediscovering old ones is my favorite part of going through like library book sales and thrift stores. That's how I get most of the books. Like most of my favorite books were just going to the library or picking it up at a thrift store and giving it a chance. So.
Yeah, and there are tons of authors, especially science fiction authors that we have never talked about yet, and I want us to touch on them at least a little bit. My first one is Ian Doe Binder, which is actually Earl and Otto Binder, 2 brothers.
Very
Ian
cool.
Doe.
Ian Doe. Nice.
And not great authors, but like I said, they wrote at least one really brilliant short story, and I've read a couple other of their stories so far. They're kind of typical for 1930s.
That's all right.
But I'm going to explore some more of their work yet, and then I'll do it. I don't know if I'll do it alone or if I'll get you to read some of them.
I mean,
just
I'm
short
always
stories.
game. I'm always game. I'm delving now into sci-fi much more than I have in the past and finding I'm really enjoying it. I'm delving more into horror and finding out I enjoyed it. Like, there were just things that weren't really on my radar when I was younger. So it's really fun to have someone like you who comes and influences and says, hey, let's give this one a try. I'm finding so many new things that I wouldn't have gone and pursued myself otherwise. So I really enjoy that.
And I was chatting with Samantha this morning with all the stuff that you've never read. And, you know, I have already got you to read things like Ringworld.
That was
and
fun.
some
I
of the
love
other
Ringworld.
science fiction authors. But there's still a lot you haven't.
I know.
experience.
I want to get into some Terry Pratchett. I've never read Terry Pratchett.
Neither have I.
Yeah, I would love to get into his stuff because I hear his stuff is really fun and playful, but really good literature and thought-provoking. So I had watched a documentary on him. I think it was Whistler who did it on YouTube for one of his, I think, biographics.
Okay.
He did one that was very thoughtful, really
Okay.
nicely done, little synopsis of his life, and like the guy was just like a real genuine nice guy.
Okay.
Like you just never know those things unless somebody takes the time to really research him and stuff, and I just
Right.
appreciated it so much. It's like, why haven't I read this guy before? Why haven't I read more Mary Shelley either? Like she wrote more than just Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So being able to invest in her would be really cool and see more of her stuff that she's done. What was the other one? Oh, was it? It wasn't Princess of Mars that I'm thinking. What was the other one? I can't remember. There was another author, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but then it just went. Whoop.
Okay.
It's the snow. I'm blaming the snow. It's keeping me from thinking straight.
Yeah, but that's the other thing I did is I read Foundation in October because I wanted to. I read it years ago. I wanted to reread at least the first book before I watched the TV series.
Yeah.
So I reread the first book, Foundation, and then I've been watching the TV series, and I'm very angry about that. The TV series is well done, but it's not Asimov.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't honor Asimov's original vision.
His original story was all about this plan to soften the collapse of the Galactic Empire by having certain people in certain places taking certain actions at certain periods of the history that he predicted would come. He predicted this through a very complex mathematics called psychohistory. And it was a statistical prediction, so it's like predicting the weather. But
Yeah,
still, he's mostly accurate about how things are going to go. And so we had characters in place at specific times in the future so that they could try to stave off really dramatic, horrible events like big space wars or whatever, and they did it. And so the early part of Foundation, there's a character that's like the mayor of his first foundation on a planet called Terminus.
Yeah.
And this guy, there's even a quote from him that I'm going to blow this quote, I know, but it's something like violence is the last resort of the inept or something like that.
Yeah.
And totally pacifistic philosophy.
Yeah.
And that's the way Asimov was. He was a pacifist.
Yeah.
And
Everything
believed
had to
in
be
war.
resolved as peaceably as possible.
And that was the point of the Foundation, is to be there at these critical times and try to smooth things over so it didn't go into complete war and
Yeah.
collapse and
Yeah. To
barbarism.
prevent further violence or worse things from coming.
Yeah. So then the Apple TV series goes and takes this character. I forget the character's name. But it's the same character, but now it's a young black girl. You know, mind you.
Yeah.
She looks
She's a
like
child.
a 20-year-old black girl.
Oh, I thought I was envisioning a child for some reason when you told me that,
Yeah,
like
but
11.
she's the leader of the Foundation.
Okay.
Okay. That's hard enough to believe, but, you know,
20-something being able to fool a nation or a planet.
the moment this one group starts making violent overtures and wanting to start, you know, a war against what's left of the empire, they go to the Foundation and try to take over the Foundation. And this character in the TV series right away says, we got to get weapons and we got to go and fight. And it's like, no, that's not how it was. That's not Asimov. That's not Foundation.
Yeah, so this is an entirely
You know,
different
they're
generation.
trying to turn this into Star
Foundation.
Wars. You know, where you have big space battles and crap.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, fine. Write your story with big space battles and do it. But don't call it Isaac Asimov's Foundation.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a slap in the face of what he was all about.
His core value was pacifism entirely, and yeah, that is a That is a huge slap in the face to his work, I think. Like, you can enjoy the series, that's fine. Enjoy it for the work it is, but Asimov is turning in his grave right now. We just know it.
And his daughter, Robin, is an executive producer on this thing. She should be ashamed.
How dare. How dare. But
I just can't believe
I
it.
get it, though, because this generation doesn't want pacifism. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing interesting
You know
about
what?
pacifism when,
What succeeds in Hollywood right now is Transformers or
Yeah.
Justice League or
Star Wars.
or
Yeah.
what's the Marvel
All
Avengers.
of them. Yeah, all the Marvel. They're doing all of it now,
All
so
of them.
like,
And it's all lots of special effects and battles and punching out and
yeah,
explosions.
lots of
and
physical
stuff.
conflict, not
It's
necessarily.
fun, but it's, you can't take something like Foundation and try to turn it into that. It's just, once again, and Asimov gets this every time somebody tries to make a movie of one of his works. They turn it into this kind of thing.
This
and
battle
it's
royale.
Just, they just don't get Asimov. They don't
No.
get what he was about.
Yeah, he definitely was. Yeah, major pacifist. He thought that especially in this day and age, we should, as a very high tech, intellectually based being, be able to solve problems without violence more frequently. Like, I always joked with my dad, when World War III comes, we aren't going to need guns, we're going to need firewalls, because it's all going to be virtual at this point.
Probably.
Because it is a head game. When you think about virtual, like, cyber attacks and stuff, that's more of a head game. It's less violent, but it certainly does more damage and that kind of thing. So that's kind of like, when I think of warfare, it's less violence, and it's more technological and, like, economic attacks, and, like, we're not dealing with the bloodshed anymore. Now we're dealing with the more head game stuff where we're attacking, secrets and espionage and that sort of thing. And that's kind of, like, I know Asimov doesn't do a ton of that, but that's kind of where he leans, where the intellectuals are not going to resort to grabbing a gun and shooting.
Right.
They're going to resort to far more complex attacks and far more complex issues. And so it does have to be solved with more intellect than it does brute force.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really the kind of times we're heading into, or at least, like, what I feel like at this point in my generation we should be heading into. But, like, people still love shoot-'em-ups.
Yeah.
It just seems really interesting that you would think we'd be heading in the other direction, where it's more about, techie stuff. And I think we see that a little bit in Hollywood. Like, Inception, I thought, was a really good, like, head game in particular. Excuse me. More head game, where it's like, yeah, there's still conflict, but it's meant to be, like, the metaphor of what's happening in someone's dreams and their brain as they're concepting through struggles or concepting through stuff. And it's more espionage based. It's a shoot 'em up that's not really meant to literally be a shoot 'em up. The tickle hit your throat too, yeah.
It's only because I swallowed the wrong way. It's
Yeah.
hanging in there or something.
Yeah. So I just think it's interesting in this day and age that we have so much more technology where it could be more head game stuff, but people still just want brute force fighting.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
But they elected Trump too, so that tells you a lot about people.
And let's steer away from politics. I'm so burned out on that shit.
I know.
No, I know. Yeah, but
the masses don't get our technological world. They don't even understand it.
no, the science is too complex for them. You tell me
It's
that all
way
the
beyond
time. It's beyond explanation now for the average mind to comprehend, and that gets scary for people. So they don't want to sit there
Yeah.
and head game it.
Yeah.
They want to be entertained.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I like the shoot-'em-ups too. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Gladiator, are you not entertained? Because, like, that is, like, the primary form of entertainment has always been very violent. And I think it's just kind of, I do think it's ingrained in us, but I think when it comes to large-scale problem resolution or large-scale warfare, it just seems like there are certain things that should be a lot more effective in crippling enemies when it comes, like, attack their economics, attack their resources, don't attack them physically, But if you get them, I don't know. It just doesn't make as much sense to me to have like literal war.
And before anybody thinks the wrong thing, I think Asimov would have been supportive of the idea of a black woman replacing that character.
Oh, good idea.
Because he was a feminist. He was standing up on television in support
Big social
of
justice
the
guy.
Equal Rights Amendment back in the 1970s. So he probably would have been okay with that, but I just feel he would have made her more like 35, 40.
A little
not so
wiser.
young to be in, because, I mean, in iRobot, the main character that runs through all those stories that makes up that collection is Susan Calvin. She's a robot psychologist, and she is the lead character in all these stories, solving the problems that these robots are running into. And and he did that in the 1940s. So he would have been supportive of that. But Susan Calvin wasn't. She didn't. I don't really know how old this character is supposed to be in Foundation, but she
If
looks
nothing
like
else,
she's
she's an
21.
old soul. Yeah. She
I
looks
mean-
like she's an old soul at least.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. You get that vibe from the writing, from what I understand. That she's this old soul who's very intelligent, extremely, that's her job, like head game stuff.
But it's still just, well, and maybe in the far future it would be different, but in our world, you don't get into positions of authority when you're 20, 21, 25. You gotta work your way up.
Yeah, unless you're the one who's starting the business, you really aren't.
Yeah.
You really aren't. They want you coming out of college with 15 years of experience, it seems like.
Right.
There was this one job application that I remember seeing at one point where they're like, we want you to have at least 5 years of experience in this particular program. The program hadn't even been out for 5 years. And I'm like, really? You want some? I'm like, I had half a mind to just write them a letter saying, I'm not applying for this because the program that you're talking about has not had a version of it prior to this year. I'm like, this is not even 2 years old. So how can I have 5 years of experience on this particular program?
In our field, I see that all the time.
Yeah,
where
people have no
they
idea.
have this huge list of skills that they want you to be experienced with for a job that they're only calling for a year's worth of experience, and recent graduates are encouraged to apply. And they're only going to pay
It's a
you
starting position, but they want you to
$30,000 a year.
start at having had 3 years experience.
They want you to have a skill set equal to somebody that in any other profession would be paid above $100,000 a year, and they're only going to pay you $25,000, $30,000.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Yeah, I agree with that in this day and age that that doesn't make sense to me either, having someone be so young. Like, they'd have to have exceptional credentials. Or like, I don't know, maybe they have the technology to predict the good vibes off that. I don't know. What are they doing? Yeah, I would expect it to be a much older character. More wise.
Exactly.
Oh, well.
And so I wasn't knocking the fact that she's a black woman. I'm knocking the fact that she looks like a kid.
Yeah, she's practically
and she's
a teenager.
in charge of the planet.
Yeah.
I'm just not buying that.
Yeah, it's not. We have a childlike empress situation all over again. It's like,
No,
welcome
this
to the
was
never-ending.
an elected position.
Yeah, never-ending story all over again.
Yeah. So.
Oh well.
So yeah, I'm not enjoying. I'm enjoying Foundation, but I'm not enjoying that it's connected to Isaac Asimov.
Everything you know about Isaac Asimov, just throw it out the window before you watch it.
Yeah, just consider it some other story.
Yeah, it's sci-fi.
Yeah.
That's marketing for you.
So that's my rant for the week.
Yay! Glad you got it off your chest.
Glad I'm done.
Yeah, there it is. Just wait. In comes the hate mail.
Yeah, well, we
You
haven't gotten
can.
any of that yet.
Yeah.
We're too small.
Yeah, we are. We're babies, but that's all right.
But we're also right.
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but I do understand your concern. There's a lot to unpack when you're using the context of Isaac Asimov.
Well, and especially a fan like me of his work, I'm still waiting for somebody to do it right. And I really had high hopes that this was going to be it. Because Apple was behind it, and there was a lot of money behind it. and they just aren't there. They don't understand Isaac Asimov yet.
Yeah.
And I hear that from readers too, that they read Asimov and they just don't get what he did with his literature. You know, it isn't like anything else you've read. He is different. And his philosophy, his politics are not, you know, they were appropriate in the 60s and 70s, but there's not a lot of people that follow that kind of philosophy today. Even on
It just sounds like he was a
the-
real hippie.
Well, even among
kind
the
of.
more liberal leaning people, his, you know, the older brand of liberalism is a lot different from what you're seeing today. People just don't get him.
Yeah.
They don't get it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any good movies that are more headgame like that. I guess like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight was more of a headgame one. There wasn't a lot of like action per se. There wasn't a lot of violence per se. Things were more like solving the riddle of what it means to, and like unraveling what it means to be a knight. So much. It doesn't really, there's not a lot of action, which I think other people who don't appreciate more art film style things probably found that movie to be very boring. But I really enjoyed it because one, it was very artistically done and phenomenal. Two, everything was resolved without violence. And three, there were some deviations from the story, but the basic outline of the story was still there. It was still about honor and unraveling what that looks like and what that means.
Yeah.
And so it can be done, and it can be done well. We've seen it. So there can be very peaceful solutions to things, and there can be resolutions without violence. But for the most part, you just don't see a lot of that anymore.
No.
Sadness.
No, that movie did surprise me in a good way, but it surprised me that it wasn't your typical Hollywood Conan the Barbarian, let's have lots of sword fights and special effects.
There was hardly any violence at all. Like right in the beginning of the film with the knight posing his game, so to speak, his challenge. That was the only violence really there was.
Right.
The rest of it was just Sir Gawain figuring the shit out. And unraveling his own personal issues with what it means to be a knight, having not done it before. So, it's interesting. It was a very interesting movie. I liked it a lot.
Oh, and I didn't mention that I read another Agatha Christie, Halloween Party.
Yeah.
Read that one with Samantha around Halloween. And gotta say that one's not as good as And Then There Were None.
Okay.
But it was enjoyable.
Okay.
It just
Good to
was. It was a lot easier than And Then There Were None.
Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to read a little bit more. Or I've started collecting in the last few weeks with our thrifting more Agatha Christie stuff. So I'm excited to read her work because she's been recommended to me. But again, I have a really hard time with mysteries.
Yeah.
There's too
And
many.
I've been pushing And Then There Were None, but maybe you should read some of the others first.
Okay.
Then read them.
Okay.
Because, like I said, Halloween Party, it was good. It just wasn't as good as And Then There Were None.
Okay.
So, I gotta shoot a video on that one, talking more in depth about it. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Cool. I don't
That's
really
it.
have much else that I've read because life has been so busy. But now it's snowing, and winter is here already. So I will be hunkering down for the winter and definitely reading a
Time
lot
to get out the
more.
blankets and hot chocolate.
Yeah. Snuggle up
If you
with the
have a
kitties.
fireplace, fire up the fireplace.
Yep. Enjoy the winter.
Enjoy the winter.
Yep. That's the
Okay.
plan. Thanks for joining
So-
us, guys.
So long.
Bye.